right, good morning. We're going to go ahead and start. The ASWCB Judicial Board today will be hearing a case against Ashland Salzman versus the Elections Board regarding a few election code violations. And how it's going to work today is in accordance with bylaws. Each party will have 15 minutes to state their argument, starting with the complainant, Ms. Salzman. She'll have 15 minutes to state her argument. After her argument, the election board will have 5 minutes to rebut that argument. Any witnesses or anybody testifying will have 5 minutes, no more than 5 minutes to testify. And the elections board will have 5 minutes to rebut that testimony as well, or ask any questions, as well as the judicial board. Okay. Without further ado, Ms. Salzman, you go ahead and start with your opening argument.
Okay. Thank you, Just.
One second. Yes.
Do we have 15 minutes as well?
Yes, you do. Yes, I apologize. So it'll go 15 minutes for Ms. Salzman, 5 minutes for rebuttal. After that, once all that's done, you'll get 15 minutes in return, and she'll have 5 minutes for rebuttal, and then we'll do closing the hearing. Is that good? Okay. Please continue.
We thank you, justices, for hearing this case and for taking and attendees for taking the time to get involved with this process. We face a predicament today that's pivotal for ASWCB. The real question we face here is not of the rules. If the rules of the election have been broken, you'll see that the loss of evidence that itself will not matter. Rather, the issue we must struggle with is what the outcome we provide the student body with as a result of this hearing will be. How can we assure that we honor both the law and student voices? Our bylaws and the codes which give our organization legitimacy state that all members of ASWCB serving in any capacity whatsoever within ASWCB must comply with the bylaws. Unless such compliance is in direct conflict with the ASWCB Constitution, the rules and regulations of Washington State University, or the laws of the city, county, state, or federal government, Bylaw 120.01. Therefore, it is not only our right, but our duty to shed light on the conflicts that have been formed from this election and handle these issues accordingly. The bylaws in question today are sections 620.03, 652.01, 652.03, 620.04, and 650.07. And now Carly Lauder will speak a little bit on those bylaw items.
Bylaw section 620.03 states, the polling site shall be open from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. unless otherwise decided upon the Senate during the approval of the elections calendar. No changes in time were proposed to or approved by the Senate. There were multiple days in which the polling states were not open throughout these periods of time. These polling stations were intended to make voting easy for students, especially during the passing periods, particularly closed early on the last day of voting at approximately 5:55 p.m. Students would not necessarily have had time to go log into the computer or the Wi-Fi on campus to cast their vote between 5:50 and 6 p.m. But the voting at the polling stations takes less than 2 minutes if there are no technical difficulties. This alone would have changed the election outcome of just one vote difference. Bylaw section 652.01 states, poster, section A, posters shall be defined as paper printed material placed indoors or outdoors, and section E, poster size. Section 1, each campaign is allowed to use one poster no larger than 8.5 by 11 inches per location. Banners are comparable in this instance to a poster in the form and in content, and therefore exceed the specifications of size of poster materials used for campaigning processes. This is regardless of whether the poster is indoors or outdoors and may only be placed in the designated areas allowed for campaigning, as also specified in the bylaw. Bylaw section 653.03 states, other campaign literature materials. Section A, gummed handles or bumper stickers shall not be used, including adhesive material of any kind. A pair of candidates was given permission by the elections board to use stickers as campaign material. This is in direct conflict with bylaw section 653.03. As stated from the email from the election board when asked about the stickers by another candidate, the following response was given. The board met yesterday and we have decided stickers are okay. The election board has interpreted stickers as not adhesive. We see the adhesive as pertaining to glue and tape, things that are used to place your flyers up. If you need clarification, please ask elections board chair. Now, stickers are defined in the Merriam-Webster dictionary as Definition 2A, one that adheres or causes adhesion. Section B, a slip of paper with adhesive back that can be fastened to a surface. This very basic definition states that stickers are indeed adhesive material. This bylaw found in a section about other types of campaigning materials, not in regard to supplies used to hang flyers. The election board violated the spirit of the law here, failing to prevent campaign material from being adhered to surfaces at the university by allowing the distribution of stickers as campaign material. The Judicial Board has the right to review any board decision based on bylaw section 611.03, and the Judicial Board alone has the sole power to interpret the Constitution and bylaws. Finally, bylaw section 650.01 states, campaigning as used in these codes shall be defined as the use of any print, electronic, or verbal presentation in the name of any candidate or ballot issue. Bylaw section 620.04 states, by 8 a.m. the morning of the election, candidates shall remove all of the campaign materials from the areas within sight of the polling sites. Any campaign material put back up at the polling site after the area has been cleared shall be considered an election code violation. Bylaw section 650.07 states, there shall be no form of campaigning within close proximity of the established ASWSB polling stations as determined by the election board. The election board allowed candidates to use the electronic reader board located between the multimedia classroom building and the Vancouver Library building to post an ad of their campaign for the duration of the voting week. The electronic reader board at that location is clearly visible from the polling site by the view lid. This constitutes a violation and a failure to maintain the polling sites of the neutral voting station.
So today we are asking you to do justice to the organization of ASWCB as well as the student voice. For the past 2 years, voter turnout has been at an all-time high, exceeding 25%. However, the special election conducted last year had a turnout of around 19%, and we have seen a lower turnout than that number this year. Perhaps because students feel their voice is not being valued as it should due to the decisions that have been made following election code violations. Turnout this year was 19.4%. Morale on this campus is already low in regard to the election process. That is why I urge you now to make a decision that will not disregard the student voice that is loudly opposed to the idea of another special election. This attitude can be seen and felt through social media posts as well as even interacting with students on this campus at this time. While students are questioning the validity of our election system, it's important that we are able to stand before any peer or community member after today and proudly say that we were able to handle election violations with poise and professionalism that confirms the legitimacy of our organization. Although total invalidation of the election is entirely valid based on the violations presented in this case, there are other better options. We urge that the Judicial Board therefore remand the election results to the student senate. By striking one vote from the race, a 0.2% difference in the top two tickets, the Judicial Board can show leniency or judicial restraint in this case. This means that the Judicial Board is trusting the elected representatives of the other branch, the Senate, of the student government to function as they are intended to function, as the most active and engaged branch of student government in student affairs. Seeing as all 3 presidential tickets were produced by the 11-member Senate, there is no more fair avenue for this election to be decided than an analytical group of students who are in tune with the student voice and are able to represent that voice without placing an undue burden on the campus by having to vote again. Some have questioned the fairness of striking one vote from the election results. However, we must weigh the costs and benefits of this decision. On one hand, one vote will be stricken, and that is valid. On the other hand, the Judicial Board does have the power to invalidate any or every part of an election. Bylaw section 653.01 subsection E number 6 states that the Judicial Board may, after the election, invalidate the election or any part of the election results if a violation has a substantial impact on the outcome of the election. We believe we had an active presence in campaigning, which included handing out flyers for approximately 14 hours a day, give or take a couple hours during voting, while the Troy Collier ticket was able to maintain a passive presence on campus by having these prohibited campaign materials there 24/7, such as the electronic reader board. In a race that has been almost unbelievably close, it is easy to see how the combination of any of these bylaw violations over the course of the election could have changed the outcome of just one vote. In last year's special election, 7% less students voted in the voted in the special election than in the regular election. If we can expect the same decrease in voter turnout if the special election is conducted, we will be losing the voice of 210 students. Since there is almost equal support on this campus for the Troy Collier and Louder Salzman tickets, it is a much better representation of the student interest to demand the vote to set in. We are asking you to do justice to the student voice here, to the students who truly do not want another re-election. Please consider the detrimental effect re-election can have on student involvement for WSU Vancouver, and make the decision to handle this conflict in a way that upholds the governing documents of our organization and the mission of ASWSUB to be representatives of students on this campus. Ms. Lauder and I again would like to thank you all for taking your time to engage in this process by attending this hearing. We surely hope that a special election does not come from this complaint, as we know that students are highly opposed to this outcome. We understand that concern and we respect it. It is of the utmost importance to us that at the end of the day, the outcome here produces a fair result in the elections that will cause students to trust in the integrity of ASWSUB. By keeping each other and ourselves accountable to the rules and regulations set by those who have come before us, we hope to gain the respect and trust of every student at WSU Vancouver as an organization.
Ms. Salzman, do you have anybody to testify supporting your accusations to some of these bylaw violations?
We do have Ms. Schroy and Ms. Tafina here to speak on behalf of the polling station being closed early on Thursday of voting.
Okay. Who would speak first?
Ms. Schroy.
Okay. Ms. Schroy, I just ask you to state your name and your position at ASWSUB.
My name is Jennifer Schroy. I'm a current senator for this ASWSUB session.
Go ahead with your testimony.
May I clarify something very quick?
Yeah, please.
Are we only referring to the polling stations closing early, or are we also referring to them?
Whatever, you have 5 minutes to
Talk.
right.
Okay. Ms. Tafina and myself actually both carpooled together on the Tuesday of the first day of the elections or voting, and we got to campus around 8:30 or so, probably 8:45. We started campaigning around 9 o'clock, and we actually had to go to an interview at 10. Between the hours of 9 and 10, the polling station was not open. I believe it was being set up around 10, but that is an hour after the time that the polling station was supposed to be open. In regards to Thursday nights closing early, Sarah and myself, again, we're both focused on campaigning in the fountain area, and we were in a visible sight of the polling station and witnessed that the polling station was being packed up at 5:50, and approximately everything was gone from that station at 5:55.
Is that all you have?
That's all I have.
Okay. Ms. Tafina, do you have this microphone? You have 5 minutes. You can start whenever you're ready.
Okay, so I'm currently going to be a senator next year, but I'm also, I guess, I am currently an officer in Psychology Club, so I do have my presence there for the student voice. So, like Troy said, that all occurred as well. I was with her the entire time, witnessed the beginning of the polling stations not up at the appropriate time. They were being set up close to when we were leaving to the interview that we had to attend around 9:55 or so, because it was close. Throughout the whole election, the polling station was down at random times and up because of movement and people availability from what I could visually see. And I'm also always staring at this handy-dandy thing. So I noticed at the end of the election, I was actually communicating with some of the election board people, and they were all packed up and ready to go at 5:55, which I did note is something peculiar from someone that's not on Senate, and so I was just kind of observing from an outside perspective. So, yeah, that's kind of my perspective.
Elections board, you'll have 5 minutes to rebut against Mrs. Salzman, and I'll also allow you 5 minutes for each of the testimonies as well.
I guess the first question that we would have is for one of the witnesses, as far as Ms. Jennifer Troy. Do you feel after sitting and voicing opinion for this ticket, that you could be an unbiased representative in the Senate should a vote come?
I actually do believe that. I would very much look forward to both of the candidates talking about what they feel happened with the election, the results thereof, and should either ticket give a better argument, that would definitely sway my vote.
Can I ask you guys, what exactly is your interpretation of bylaw 611.03?
Can you read that bylaw to us, please?
The election board shall have the following powers and duties. A, to interpret the election codes when necessary. The interpretation shall be binding, subject to appeal by the judicial board.
It clearly states that you're allowed to interpret your bylaws, but that complaints are allowed to be brought against you to the judicial board, which is what this hearing is.
I would like to point out that she said we do have the jurisdiction to interpret the bylaws in this process.
We would like to ask why, according to the bylaws, when it specifically states that according to bylaw 65301, that the election board must receive a written complaint before any action can be referred to the judicial board, and why we never received any complaint prior to this or had any knowledge of any of this prior to.
Is this a question of the judicial
No,
board?
this is to Ms. Salzman, and also to acknowledge that this complaint is specifically from and only from Ms. Salzman and not the Louder Salzman ticket.
Thank you for your question. I did voice concern on the sticker issue, and when I felt that that issue was not dealt with as the bylaws dictate, after the election process, I decided that the judicial board should be involved in reviewing the decisions made by the elections board and their interpretation of the bylaws.
You want to strike one vote from the total. Who are you taking this vote from?
I mean, the way that I see it is we could trade one vote for 210. That's more of an injustice than striking a 0.2% of the vote. I know that it may seem like you're taking the vote away from one person, but the most accurate picture we have at this time is that there's almost equal support for both our ticket and the Troy Collier ticket on this campus. So we think it is fair, given all the evidence here, that they are not punished completely by having to run another campaign, but just have one vote taken away.
So you think it's fair to take one vote away from somebody who has taken part in this process? It shouldn't be but one vote from each side, that's what you're saying?
Well, if we took one vote from each side, the outcome would be the same. There would be no difference made. And as support for that statement, if there was a complaint against us, I would encourage the same. If the outcome was reversed, I would encourage the judicial board to make the same decision to call it even and remand it to Senate if we have one. Because I think that is doing the justice to not only the students, but to both candidates, as well as the elections board and the judicial board and our organization. Because we cannot stand before the students and say, again, your voice didn't matter the first time, please vote again.
And I have one last question. Can you answer this honestly, please? Do you really think that these actions, regardless of what happened, made an impact on giving a team an advantage?
I believe that, like I said, the Troy Collier ticket was able to maintain a presence out on campus, whether they were out there or not, through the use of the electronic reader board, which is in direct sight of the polling station and within the distance that you all set for campaign material being in those bounds, as well as the polling stations were closed at 5:55, and we were the only candidates out there campaigning at that time. It was a passing period. There were students heading to class. I had a student tell me they didn't have time to vote, and had those stations been open, I believe that that one vote could have made the difference. So yes.
As far as a constant present, how do you justify a 10-second ad showing up every 5 minutes as a consistent presence on the e-reader board?
I would say it's a presence that no other candidate had. And I completely see it's a great campaign technique, but however, it should not be allowed within the distance of the polling station and visible distance. The electronic reader board, for instance, by the FSC or the engineering building, those are completely fine. They are constant reminders to students. I mean, there have been studies after studies done by universities such as Vanderbilt College that voting is based primarily off of name and face recognition. So I think that was no matter how insignificant, I think you could equate it to one vote at least.
Do you feel that where you were ticket and everybody that was campaigning was standing on the stairs was any different distance from the polling station than that board?
We actually did not position ourselves on the stairs. If we were campaigning out there, we were at the bottom of the stairs or past the library door as specified by Joe.
I'll let
Well,
the board
just,
start.
okay. No, I was just stating that they stated that they had been standing on the stairs there campaigning during that time when they were watching us close up at supposedly 5:55, which.
Well, I know that this concern was addressed to the chair as well as the advisor of if that campaign material was okay, was in the distance of the polling station, and was a respectful use of SNAPs by using that reader board, and everyone said it was okay. So that's all I have to go on here at this time.
We're going to open it up to the justices to ask any questions that they may have. Do you have any, Steve?
Not this one.
Ms. Salzman, was the electronic reader board resource available to all tickets?
We were not made aware before inquiry that the electronic reader board was available as campaign material. We did inquire about it on the Wednesday of elections, but by that time it was too late to submit a request for that. And that is fine, that was their own creative way of campaigning. But once we realized, that's in sight of the polling station anyways, we decided that we didn't want to take that route. So.
My question is for Ms. Schroy. As a seated senator and seeing that the polling stations were closed, as you stated, and opened late at 10 o'clock on the beginning day and 5:50 being packed up, what action did you take?
My focus at the time was to present myself to students, to sell myself to students. We could not sell forward choice, excuse me. It was to present myself to students and try to earn their respect for their vote. I wasn't focused necessarily on what the elections board was doing at that exact time. It was something that I took note of. But as members of ASWC, we know that we have to run by our own guidelines, that we have to run by our bylaws that relegate us, and I would have hoped that another organization under ASWC would have taken their bylaws into account.
With Ms. Hellman, with the Senate being comprised of 5 members or 6 members that were on the ticket out of the Senate, or no, 5, right? 6.
It's
College
3
members.
members
Oh.
for the presidential.
Do you think it would be honestly a fair decision if it went that way, and can you explain a little bit?
I would say if so needed, I would be glad to abstain from voting on that decision. Leave it to the 8 other senators, so Carly, Lauder, and Deutsch would also abstain, so that the Senate, who aren't involved in the presidential campaign process, would still have the ability to vote on this issue. And that's still 8 members plus the vice president, and she might break the tie, that would be able to represent the student voice. I mean, these senators were elected out of 23 candidates last year. They are the best representatives of students on this campus at this time.
The Judicial Board has no further questions this time. Elections Board, will you go ahead and start? Your 15 minutes starts now.
Thank you, Mr. Trudeau. So we, as the Elections Board, have made each and every decision using the bylaws, the past election, and logical reasoning. We feel that the complaints from Ms. Salzman against us could have been brought up at the time of occurrence rather than at the end, after all the results were already finalized and officially posted through multiple channels. She should have brought him up using the correct process in the bylaws stated in 65301B. The Election Board must receive a written complaint before any action can be referred to the Judicial Board. As the Election Board, we have the authority under Bylaw 61103. The Election Board shall have the following powers and duties. A, to interpret the election codes when necessary. The interpretation shall be binding, subject to appeal by the Judicial Board. The Election Board has worked diligently and consistently this semester in a very short amount of time to plan, advertise, and monitor the elections. Our duties each year is to administer the spring elections and to interpret the election codes when necessary. We strongly urge everyone involved in deciding the outcome of this hearing to consider their actions as well as its effect in portraying the mission statement of ASWSCB to the campus community and WSU as a state institution of higher education and the future of ASWSCB as a whole as well. Here are responses to the accusations brought against us. 620.03 states that the online polling should be open effective 9 a.m. on the first day of polling and close 6 p.m. on the last day of polling. The polling site in question, closing at the contested 5:55 p.m., is assumed because the last vote came in at 5:55 p.m. While the last vote may have come in at this time, the polling site was still open until 6 p.m. The election board members were at the table cleaning up and didn't get inside the FSC building until approximately 6:20 p.m. The laptop was available at the polling site in front of the library until 6 p.m. as mandated by the election calendar for any voters that may have come by. The polling stations may not have been manned at certain times each day due to insufficient staffing issues that often arise with an all-volunteer workforce. For those that did sign up, some did not show up due to either forgetting or crossing off their names with whiteout. The ability to vote was not inhibited by this for the sheer fact that access to voting was online on any computer and all students have access to the service. This in no way gave any one candidate an advantage over another candidate and did not significantly affect the outcome of the election. We hope the Judicial Board agrees with the Election Board and takes into consideration that the board is only 4 people and it is tough for all of us to be out in both locations 3 days in a row. This is why we ask for volunteers who are part of ASWSCB and outside of ASWSCB. Bylaw 620.04 and 650.07 states that all campaign materials should be removed from polling sites the morning of the elections and that there should be no form of campaigning within close proximity of the established ASWSCB polling stations. It appears that this accusation is a complaint towards the candidate and not the election board and should be focused at a candidate level. Ms. Osmond should have followed proper procedures by submitting this complaint first to the election board as stated in Bylaw 653. None of the members of the election board was aware that the flyer was up on the specific electronic reader board outside of multimedia classroom across the stairs by the library during polling time. This accusation is the first notification that the election board has received on this matter. The election board is wondering if this was such an important matter to Ms. Salzman, then why had she not mentioned it right when she saw it during the election? The election board would have required them to remove the sign as any other campaigning material and they would have received a warning. If the election board was notified at the time, some action or discussion would have occurred regarding this complaint. We hope the Judicial Board decides the election board agrees with the election board and takes into consideration that the board is doing their job to the best of their abilities and being neutral and not trying to give any candidate an advantage over anyone else. A candidate was simply using their campus resources to campaign. The ad should have been taken down before the polling stations opened. But then again, this did not significantly impact the outcome of the results because this ad would be up about every 5 minutes for 10 seconds. There are plenty of other ads that come on, and Karen stood out there one day and actually measured the frequency of a chosen ad to give us an idea of how often an ad would show up, which could potentially reveal if it had a substantial impact or not. With Karen's observation, it shouldn't have. 652.01 is in regards to posters. The size of posters can be no larger than 8.5 by 11 inches. The banner that is said to be too big for a poster size is not considered a poster, but a sign, which falls under 653.02, listing duration of signs and posters. Signs and posters are very different approved forms of campaigning. While the bylaws are clear about what a poster is defined as, the definition of signs is not well defined, leaving it up to the elections board to interpret and define what it is, because that is part of our duties, to interpret the bylaws. To be clear, the banner was only used for tabling purposes and not posting on bulletin boards such as the posters were. We, as the elections board, has agreed the banner was considered a sign and did not need to meet poster regulations. Banners during tabling were used last year as well. Once again, if Ms. Salzman had concerns regarding this banner during the election, she should have notified the election board her concerns so it wouldn't be a later issue. With banners being used, it shouldn't have had a substantial impact on the results. We hope the Judicial Board agrees with the election board and takes into consideration that the board is doing their job to the best of their abilities and being neutral and not trying to give any candidate an advantage over anyone else. Part of our job has to do with interpreting the bylaws, which could be overall general and room for the election board to have say in what it means. 65203 discusses other campaign literature materials. The election board received an inquiry from Ms. Salzman as to the approval of the use of stickers. The election board reviewed the bylaw under section 5203 as well as the example set of past elections. Stickers have been used in the previous election. In the conversation that the election board had in determining whether stickers should be used, we defined a handbill as a quarter sheet of paper flyer, such as a quarter sheet version of the candidate's flyer, and gummed and adhesive materials were defined by the election board as tape and glue. Because adhesive material is so general, we had to identify and clarify what that meant. As the elections board, that's part of our job. Otherwise, shirt printing labels, water bottle labels, etc. would have been considered the use of adhesive materials. Bylaw 65203 states gummed handbills or bumper stickers shall not be used, including adhesive material of any kind. The stickers that were used in the elections were not gummed handbills, not bumper stickers, or the use of adhesive materials is so general that the election board has decided the last item on the list are adhesives used to stick other materials, which is tape and glue. A response was sent to Ms. Salzman on March 5th about confirming the use of stickers, and no other inquiries were made afterwards. At this time, we have not received any other objections from her about the use of stickers, even after our response. Had she had further concerns, she should have worked with the election board and voiced those concerns during the election. Again, the use of stickers did not have a significant outcome to this election. Had Ms. Salzman wished to use stickers, she too would have been granted permission just like anyone else. Again, the election board is a neutral body and tries to not give any candidate an unfair advantage. If the stickers didn't seem okay to Ms. Salzman after we confirmed that it was okay to use, and our reasoning, we wish that Ms. Salzman would have voiced her concerns and reasoning to us some more. It is the election board's job to make these interpretations about the elections codes that could be confusing, as well as the need for clarification, and to enforce these interpretations fairly. The interpretations included in this document were administered in a fair manner and did not give an advantage to any candidate or have a significant impact on the outcome of the election, because everything we have decided would have been the same to everyone who have asked us for clarifications and permissions. Again, we made decisions based on bylaws, the past election, and logical reasoning. It is the Judicial Board's job to support and uphold the election board's decisions unless the decision made by the election board significantly impacted the results and not just by one single vote. We trust that the Judicial Board will remain unbiased no matter their affiliations with any of the candidates to maintain fairness to all parties involved in the complaint process, including those outside of this room. Thank you.
Do you have anybody testifying on your behalf?
No.
Okay. Ms. Salzman.
In regard to the polling stations, the bylaw specifically states the polling sites shall be open from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. for the duration of voting, which, if you interpret that just from what it says, the polling site itself online is not only open from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. So I believe this to be in reference to the polling stations for candidates. And it is the duty of the elections board to stop those polling sites, whether they have to miss class or they have to get an excused absence from their teachers, or they have to share the responsibility between themselves. It is their responsibility to have people there to make voting accessible to the student body, regardless of any conflicts. I know that it is tough to staff those tables for that many hours every day, but it is their responsibility. It's in their job description. We did ask Joanna and their advisors, Beth, about the reader board. Carly asked them if that was okay during the election. So we did inquire about that reader board, specifically the one by MMC, which means that they were aware that that one was being used for campaigning purposes. I believe because of that, the neutrality of that polling station was compromised, and that one vote is a significant impact on the election. Even if just one person decided their vote based on that advertisement, that is a significant difference and impact in this outcome. The election board chair Joannis expressed that they have based their decisions on past elections as well as the bylaws. And in fact, last year, banners were asked to be taken down because they were seen as in violation of the bylaws in the past election. Just because we have disregarded the bylaws in the past as well does not mean that we should continue to go against them in the future. And in regard to not bringing these concerns up in the past, I did try to express concerns, and even after sending one email about the stickers, got pushback and told that I was being annoying about this process and that they wish that they could have thrown the bylaws at us and that we would read them for ourselves, which we believe we have because we are seated on the Senate right now. I have read the bylaws over and over, and I believe that stickers are in violation of not only our bylaws but university policy. We were focused on campaigning during the campaign process, not on reviewing the decisions of the elections board because that is their job to ensure a fair election, which they may have done their best to ensure, but I don't believe that that outcome was provided based on the decisions that they have.
Is that all? This time we'll ask some questions from the Judicial Board. Do you have any questions? Do you have a question?
Do we not get a response to those?
Was there a question? No, there was no questions. Who was the question?
Election board, I don't know if you can. Were banners specifically banned this year? They were banned last year though?
No.
I have no idea.
We're totally unaware of any of that. As cited, we approved banners to be a sign, not a poster under 65203, which specifically states signs and posters as different.
Who was approved for a banner this year?
Multiple people, a couple senators, and the opposing ticket.
Okay.
The main opposing ticket.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ms. Salzman, you stated that you had asked or inquired about the electronic reader board. Where we did not see anything on that. What information you have? You have emails or?
No, that inquiry was made in person, so I can
Okay, so just word of mouth.
show
Okay.
you that, but.
I think that is all. Do you have anything else? Okay, at this time, that concludes the hearing. Thank you for your time, and you'll be hearing from the Judicial Board, and we have 5 days to render a decision. We intend to take that full 5 days to deliberate and discuss this, and give us, with all the evidence and testimony presented to us at this time. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.